Hello, world. I'm back. It's your girl, Candace. This is Hey Cuz.
And I'm Colette. And today we have a guest, my friend, Nita. Say hello to the people, Nita.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to Hey Cuz.
Thank you.
So today we're talking about let me make sure I don't get this wrong. We're talking about being Black American versus being Black in America.
Yeah.
And we say this because you already know I believe that race is a made-up social construct anyway. But, we're playing with the cards that we've been dealt. Being Black in America means being from a different culture. Like we're West Indian American, or you could be African, people from all over the world who look Black but live in America.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're talking
about today. All right. Now that you guys got that, if not, rewind it. We're gonna get started. So, Nita, I'm gonna ask you to speak a little bit about your experience. I know you've traveled, you've been around different states and countries as well. So, what was your experience growing up being Black in America?
As an Army brat, you move around a lot. You deal with a lot of people. The joke with Army is, or Armed Forces period, is like those of us in that little group, we don't really, racism isn't as obvious, but as soon as you come outside of that, it's way more obvious to us. And when my dad retired, we moved to Seattle, Washington, and I was the only Black kid in class for a long time. And then, which I was fine with. Like I got used to it, I dealt with it, and I had good friends. We moved to the East Coast and I went into culture shock. There was a lot more people that had the same pigment as me, but they did not accept me because, quote unquote, I talked white. I sounded educated, and I did not know how to fit in at all. And to really be excited to be around people that you felt like you could relate to only be rejected by them is very, very disheartening.
It sounds like we had the same experience, even like you're American, like fully Black American, and I'm not, but we kind of experienced the same thing, which is weird. So it's kind of like maybe it's just a cultural thing.
That's been my experience, yeah.
Maybe it's just cultural.
Yeah.
Because it's like you have different types of Black people, as we said in the other show. Like you can't group people based on what they look like, but it's kind of like this is the world that we live in. And so that's why we get in situations where it doesn't make sense. Like she's Black American, she still has the same experience that I've experienced as someone who my family's not American. So I feel like I always tell people I grew up in the island of Brooklyn, because it's like growing up, it's like a mini West Indies in America. So it's just a completely different experience. But of course I am American by birth, and people look at me and I, in the US, they love to, group people by race, and race doesn't make any sense. But I'm Black to most people. So it's weird. And the thing with the talk white thing, growing up in Brooklyn, we knew a lot of Black people. It was very diverse. We knew a lot of people from the Caribbean, mostly. That's who I grew up around. Grew up around Hispanic people, Latin American people. That's primarily all the people I knew. I didn't know any white people till I moved to Georgia. But I did get the whole you talk white thing. And I did not experience that until I moved down south.
That's right.
I got that a lot. And it was very bizarre because I'm like, I just never had those conversations growing up. Yeah. We were just all Black. It didn't matter where you come from. Like I grew up, in decent middle class, I would say, family. And I knew friends who didn't, they grew up in what they would call the hood or the projects. And it wasn't a problem. We just kind of all got along. So it was just weird to experience that.
That's interesting. I mean, mine's is similar. Grew up in Brooklyn as well. All different types of cultures, and no one looked down on anybody. No one thought one was better than the other. I mean, we had our competitions and stuff. You remember, like Flag Day and all that other stuff. But I mean, it was all love. There was no type of you think you're better because you come from here. And I didn't really know there was a difference in like the way Black Americans view people from other cultures and all that until I actually went to college. And that was when I first, encountered white people on a personal level. And, they would say all the time, like, oh, you're not like the others. And I'm like, what in the world does that mean? What are the others and what are they like? Have I met them? Like,
Right.
who's the others?
Who
Who is that?
The others.
And they're like, oh, I know people from Brooklyn. You don't act like them, or you don't sound like you're from Brooklyn, and all this other stuff. I'm like, what do we sound like? Can you record it and let me know? Because I don't know. I don't know.
And what's funny is like, it's these people saying these things and they've never even been there. Like, especially when we moved here, they're like, oh, New Yorkers are so mean and y'all blah, blah, and you talk like this and you talk like I'm like, have you ever been to New York? And the answer is usually no. So it's like, how do you know this much?
Yeah.
Listen, you watching Law and Order SVU and you think you know what New Yorkers are like? I don't understand. So, I just feel like it is just so, I don't know if it's human nature. Just to group people. Is it common? Like, you live in Europe now? Do they do that? Because I feel I want to say it's largely American. It's like you have to put someone in a category, and these people are always going to be like each other. You know what I'm saying? So how does that work?
I will say, like you, I did live in the South before I moved to Europe. So yes, they do have their concept. They call us Yankees. I'm sure you've heard that statement several times. And so they just group all Northerners into one group. They think we're all rude. And like you said, when you ask, have you been to these places you're talking about? They're like, no. When I came to Europe, they were like, Europeans don't like, let me be more specific. I'm in Germany. Germans just don't care. Like, do what you're gonna do for the day and move on. Like they're not worried about us. They're not following us through the store. They're not like, oh, of course there's like the groups of, we're American, so they always have those little statements. But as far as like, I've never heard, oh, you're a Black American, so you act this way, or I'm from New York, or you're from Jersey, I heard you act this way. But no, like Germans they're just chilling. They don't, they're not worried about me.
Yeah, so weird.
So I guess we need to move, is what she's saying.
I mean, I've heard mixed reviews about being Black in Europe, but I guess it depends on where you're living. Because we have family in England, and it's just kind of like being in the South. Like people say, there's was it Southern hospitality? I think it's similar to being British. And I was just talking to one of my old coworkers. She's working in New York. She's like, I want to come back to the South. My people, New Yorkers are rude. I was like, people are rude everywhere. It's just a different type of rude. Yeah. I feel like we're honest. Like, what you see is what you get. I prefer that.
Right.
To people pretending to be nice, and then they're reaching for their gun in their pickup truck. Like, I don't like that. I want to know what I'm getting into.
Yeah.
So I prefer like just be real.
I think there's also like a difference in just knowledge, what we get taught. I remember growing up in school, like, when we learned about like global history and all that, we were learning about different cultures and what they did, what was accepted, what wasn't. So when we came across, that group of people, it was like a no-brainer to us. It didn't feel like, oh, you're different, or I need to study you. It was just like, oh, okay, cool. I know that you don't shake hands, so I'm not going to greet you like that, or, whatever the case may be. Versus when I went off to college, I mean, that was crazy. I remember like eating Jamaican food all my life. I thought nothing of it. That's my family, right? So, you bust out the curry and people are like, what is that smell? Oh my gosh, we're eating goat. Who does that? And I'm like, whoa, if you don't eat it, then don't eat it. But why does it have to be this whole, there's this negative connotation about what I view as food and what is good to me. And that was coming from a Black American.
I just hate when it's like always leaning to something negative. When I meet somebody new or from somewhere else, I want to know more about their culture. Like, I'm just fascinated. Not that I'm judging them or I think it's weird. It's just different. Who are you to say that it's weird or not normal, So I think we just need to be more accepting. But also with the education thing, Colette, we did have a different education.
We did.
So I feel like we're isolated. Because in the public school system, the great public school system of America, the curriculum's limited and they teach you what they want you to know. Mm-hmm. We had the privilege of learning more about people around the world and about learning to be more inclusive and being curious about other cultures. And maybe that's just something that's missing. I think as far as maybe a lot of Black Americans don't have that exposure to people of different culture, white Americans don't have a lot of exposure to people of different cultures. But I just hate that it always leans towards something negative when you're exposed to it.
The unknown is scary and is a threat type of thing. Nita, was that your experience going to school when you're learning in school about different cultures, different backgrounds? Did you feel like you had a decent exposure, that it would pique your curiosity to meet other people of different races or ethnic background, or was it
So
scary?
Seattle, Seattle is really truly like Native American land. So I will give them credit on that. They did definitely enforce us learning that. You usually spent 2 months per year in class learning about that.
That's good.
Primarily due to the fact that there was at least probably 2 to 3 Native American kids in your actual class. So that part was good. I'm not gonna say that they did the best. Once again, like you said, they control what we knew. So it was kind of, as I got older and learned and found out that I'm actually Native, I have Native American blood as well. Yeah, they could have done a little better. But I didn't feel uncomfortable, or at least around that group of people. Now, when I moved to the East Coast, no, they didn't. You learned about our white history, the black, the black, you learned about about 5 same people, you didn't branch off of that because that's too uncomfortable. And the rest of it was, the South fighting the North and everything else. So it makes it, which also I feel like makes it very uncomfortable and makes a very large divide in between Yankee and Southern people, which is also, like you said earlier, Candace, grouping us. Yeah, when we learn about that stuff too, that causes a big problem.
Mm.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So James Baldwin, who is a prolific Black author, I love him, reading him, and he has a lot of famous quotes. He was kind of popular in the 60s, and I always say that it's unfortunate that a lot of things that were said then are applicable now. It's 2021. But one major quote that he said, and I have another one, but the first one I'll read is, "To be African Americans, to be African without memory and American without privilege." So I think that's just a real statement because speaking for Black Americans specifically, I think most Americans, they're just displaced people. White Americans are displaced, Black Americans are displaced, but I feel like white Americans have the upper hand because they were able to create a history here, and that they brought us here, but we were excluded, largely excluded from being a part. So I think maybe they don't have as much of a need to know where they come from, whereas Black people, some people do have a desire to understand where they come from, but being Black in America, I feel, and I've told this to some of my friends, I feel like I've inherited a struggle that's not mine. And I'm being penalized for things that have nothing to do with me. I sort of feel that way a little bit because I grew up, my family is immigrants, and that's a culture that I largely relate to. That's what it was around me. But at the end of the day, I'm Black. So I think it's unfortunate. A lot of times I talk to my friends, I'm like, I know more about Black history than you do. And it's like not my history in a way. Like, and it's interesting that, Black people in their quest for knowledge, I feel like they skip steps. Like they go back to Egypt or, where I feel like Egypt is not the end all be all. And so that's frustrating because chances are your lineage does not end up there. It's in West Africa. So I just don't know why they, it's just kind of like you skip a few. Like there's a lot of American history to be learned and to be proud of. And they said my history doesn't start with slavery. No, it doesn't. But at the end of the day, it is a rich history in America. And the fact that your ancestors came up out of that's something to be proud of and not to just skip over. And so you hear about the, what do you call it, the exodus back to Africa and things of that nature. But I feel privileged in a way because I feel like, it's good to learn your history, but you can go to Africa and there is no one, you don't know anyone there. But I feel privileged that I can pick one of 3, probably 4 islands, and I can go there and find someone who I'm related to and who I know. And, so I think that's just an interesting thing. We have the privilege of knowing our history and knowing where we come from and knowing that we belong in a place. And so I can understand the frustration of being Black American, where it's like you kind of don't feel like you fit in anywhere.
That's powerful. That was powerful.
These are just my musings.
No. No, I can relate. I can relate. Any thoughts, Nita?
As a Black American, definitely. But also, I feel like in knowing, I agree that we have to, we're trying to find our place, and I have no idea where my people are from. I'm not going to lie. Me and you joke a lot about, I could be Caribbean. I have no idea. I love Caribbean culture, but I don't know my history of my people no more than the Native American part of my history. Um, so yeah, I can definitely agree with that. But I also feel like we as Black people have to come together and try to learn that, and also embrace what it is. Like you said, the slavery part, you can't just skip over that. Like, we don't like to hear about it, but it is our reality. And at the same time, I take pride in that my ancestors fought to get out of that. And that shows how resilient our people are, and how powerful and how strong we are. And that when we really put our mind to something, we can get through it. So take pride in that.
Yeah. I'm gonna blame the American school system a little bit for that too, because that is what you do learn about history, and then you learn about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. Yeah. But like, there's such a rich history, and I guess that's what I'm grateful for. Growing up in New York City and the schools we went to, and learning about the Harlem Renaissance and things of that. Like, there's so much rich history, even hip hop. Mm-hmm. Like, that is a culture. Like, I just feel like we've been displaced for so long, and I'll say I include myself in it at this point, because there's no escaping that. At the end of the day, I'm Black, so it is what it is. So it's just like, why not? It's like you want to escape being Black in America by going to Africa, but at the end of the day, it's not ours at this point. Mm-hmm. We have something here, and I feel like maybe we should embrace that. Embrace all the things that we've created. Like, we have so many amazing artists and authors and politicians and things of that nature that we should learn about and embrace the culture that was created here. Mm-hmm. I think that's what gets missed. I don't think there's anything wrong with studying African culture and things of that nature, but we have something here that is ours, and I don't understand why we don't embrace that more.
That is true. It's like being lost and trying to cling on to something else.
Yeah, you have to know where you come from to know where you're going. Exactly. That's what we come from. I mean, yes, everyone comes from Africa, but that is, let's be real, like, that's tangible. Mm-hmm. That is something that we can reach out and study and learn. That is what we come from. And I don't see why it's such a quest to like just skip over all that rich culture that was developed here to go to something that you don't know. Even I probably have lineage that traces back to West Africa, of course. I don't know them. They don't know me. I'm not going to skip over all the islands and go to Africa. Like, that wouldn't make sense. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure all my family will be like, what about us? I feel like that's what Black culture is saying. Like, what about us? Like, I think it's disrespectful to just overlook all the amazing Black Americans and all the things that they've done.
It also creates a problem for the future, though, because, any future kids you're having, you're going to raise them, in this culture of, you come from here in Africa, and this is what you are, versus, hey, this is what we built here in this country. This is what you can have, and this is how you can make this better. It's like you're missing, the future is going to be ruined off of that. Yeah. You're clinging onto something in the past. It doesn't exactly belong to you. Interesting.
I don't know if you've experienced this, Colette or Nita, from your perspective. There's kind of like a rift between Black Americans and other Black people in America. Like, there's a war, and I think it's ridiculous because at the end of the day, like I said, we're all viewed as the same. If there's racist people out there, they could care less where you come from. You all look the same. And so I just wonder why is it so hard for us all to get on the same team? Like, there's it's Africans versus Caribbeans, Caribbeans versus Africans, Caribbeans versus Black Americans, Black Americans versus, it's just it's crazy. Because I'm like, we're at the end of the day, this is where we are. This is our playing ground right here. we should all be on the same team in the quest for making things better for ourselves. And I've joked around with my friends, and I'm like, look, and because I'm a poet and I'm very outspoken about issues, being Black in America. And I've told people, I'm like, I don't have to do this, like, at all. This is not, I have no stake in the game, in essence. Like, my parents are West Indian American. I was raised in that culture, and that's what, largely influenced who I am. If I wanted to, I could just detach myself, get mine, and peace out. Like, I don't have to care, but I do. And I think a lot of people, a lot of other people, they care. So it's like, we should stop warring with each other. It's like nobody's better than the other. It's just differences in our upbringing. And we can learn from each other instead of, being jealous or hating on each other. Because I've been looked down on, like you said, by Black people a lot more so than anyone else. I've been, I don't want to say victimized, but I guess bullied, by Black people way more than any other race or culture of people.
Tell it. Yeah.
Like, you talk white, you think you're better than everyone, you're light skinned, all these things. And so it's just like, I don't get it.
I feel like I love being Black. I love my Black people, and we don't like to talk about it in the Black community, but we are some of our biggest, worst enemies. Like,
yeah,
we truly are. Like, the hate that we have within our own community and our own people, like, if you are a shade too light, like, we act funny towards you. Like, if you're a shade too dark, we act funny towards you. Like, really? Like,
gotta be that perfect milk chocolate or else.
Yeah. Like, oh, you mixed. Like, no, we gotta act funny towards you. You don't blend in with us. Like, I just feel like it's crazy that we can't just love one another, see each other as allies, and build up from there. And that to me is like the saddest part.
It's bad enough we getting it from every other side. Yes. Like, to get it from each other too, it's just ridiculous. It makes no sense. I feel like we're one of the most divisive communities of people. Like, you see the Asian community, even with the Asian hate thing, they all pull together. Asia is massive. It's made up of, it's like Americans group continents, but you forget there's all these countries. Asian Americans, they consist of so many different people, but they collectively came together, and there's like bills and laws coming out like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And those cultures are massively different. And here we are. They speak different we all speak the same language. We look the same, and we still finding reasons to hate each other. We cannot it's crazy.
I feel like in this country, it's a lot of division that, was taught in slavery and all that, but also it continues because there's this, this pool of what we're allowed to do as Black people in America, Black Americans, whatever you want to label yourself as. And instead of us going, okay, one climbs up to the top, let me pull the other one up, we see it as, oh no, there's only one spot and I got to get that spot. I got to, protect mine. I got to look out for my family. So I got to cut down whoever else in order to get there. And we see it as that versus let me get up and let me pull my people up. Let me just keep pulling us up. Let me keep pulling us up. Every other race, I feel like, does that. One gets up there and they're looking out for the other to pull them up. All the other communities I see are doing that. But us, it's nope. There's only one spot. I'm going to get that one spot. And whoever I got to tear down, I'm going to tear down in order to get there. So there's pride, there's, limitations of what we can do or have. There's this mindset of me, selfishness, and a lot of trauma. And I just feel like insecurities at the end of the day that just makes us go, oh no, not you. I got to get that, not you. It's awful.
Yeah. I think that, like I alluded to, Black Americans being displaced. And I think it's very important to know where you come from. I think that being Black in America, like the Africans or Afro-Latinos, Caribbean people, I think we have the privilege of pride, having pride in knowing where we come from and knowing our culture, which is a heavy responsibility. But I do think that kind of separates us from Black Americans. Even though they have a history and a culture, it's something that they've been made to feel ashamed of. which, like I said before, there's plenty of things to be proud of. But when all you hear and all you see is slavery, Jim Crow, that's all you get in the books. And it's kind of frustrating. It's great to see Black creators in Hollywood and stuff, but I'm sick of trauma porn. I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but I said it. I'm sick of the trauma porn. I'm sick of it. It's like we see it in the news. I don't want to watch a movie or a TV show and see that same thing. And believe it or not, and people may not agree, that impacts you. That's what you're feeding your soul, you're feeding your mind, your heart is trauma. And that is not your history. That is not all, that's not the end all be all. So I do say we have the privilege of having pride in where we come from. And there is trauma in African history and Caribbean history and, as well, but we also learn about the rest. And I think that if Black Americans took time to study and learn the rest and ignore that the constant, all you see is slavery and Jim Crow and civil rights movement and tear gas and hoses and dogs. Like, I think we need to come up out of that. It is important, but there's more. And I think that's the missing piece. Educating yourself about your history and where you come from.
I think it's important to also mention as, they didn't actually keep track of where we came from. So I think that, like you said earlier, we don't really know where to trace back to. So I think we need to focus on the positive of we were inventors. We were not just working in the fields. Even if you can't trace it all the way back to the motherland, you can still look at what we have done in this country as a people, despite it all, and know that that's. But yeah, I'm
like, we created a whole culture.
Right.
People are always trying to bite off stuff that we made. Like, it is some people's culture to steal and replicate our culture. I think that's something to be proud of in and of itself.
Right.
I mean, you were taken from your land and put in a foreign place, and you created a whole situation. I think that's massive. Like, between the music and the arts and the clothes, the literary icons, I mean, the sports heroes, there's just so much to be proud of. And it's like, how many people could say that? Like, there are people who have been, traditions have been passed down. They've been replicating the, traditions that have been passed down for thousands of years. But we came and recreated our own. I think that's even more impressive than just copying what your parents told you to do.
Yeah, agreed.
Facts.
Yeah. So I think it's important to take pride in the good and not try to glamorize the bad. Because even, like, I always say that, Black people like to pimp the struggle. Well, not just Black people, but culture, like even the media, they like to pimp the struggle. They make it look nice. But it's not something to be proud of, I feel like, to struggle. Yeah, it's great that if you did struggle and you came out of that, but not to glamorize it, to make an excuse to stay in it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because I've been like judged because they're like, oh, because I always tell people, in conversation, you get to know people. I'm like, yeah, I'm not from the hood. And like, what you mean you're not from the hood? I literally mean I did not grow up in the hood. I didn't say anything was wrong with that. It was just a statement. So I feel like in that reaction, that's not something necessarily to be proud of. Not saying there's anything wrong with that's where you came from, but that's not something to stay in. But you vilify the people who don't come from that. Because it's like you want to keep that as sacred to yourself. I'm just like, in my opinion, I'm like, when do we start wanting better for ourselves? Instead of trying to glamorize what we've been. It's like you're sitting in your pee and you try to make it look nice. And you spray Febreze on it. But at the end of the day, you're sitting in pee, and when do you want to come up out of that? I mean, you have every ability to come up, like my legs work, my arms work. I can come up out of that, get in the shower and clean up and move on. But sometimes it's just easier to just sit there. But so I'm just like, when do we decide to want better for ourselves and to stop judging each other, pointing fingers? It's like that meme with the Spider-Man and we're all pointing fingers at each other. It's like, come on, We got to get together and be on the same page. I'm not trying to downplay, you know, your culture and where you come from. You shouldn't downplay my culture and where I come from. Because at the end of the day, we're both in the same situation, same predicament. We're both Black in America. Whether you come from America or you come from somewhere else. Once you land here, you're Black, and it really doesn't matter. So why not come together and try to make that situation better?
Because I don't feel Black over here, just FYI, like at all.
Yeah, like tell the people about that. Like, because I'm always trying to explain to people, like, this is an American thing. Because even in the Caribbean, like this guy was saying, he posted on Facebook, he was like, Chinese and American, that's a weird, I mean, Chinese and Jamaican, that's a weird mix. And I was like, no, it's not. It's actually very common. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, get to know like your surroundings and your people. And I'm like, it's not a thing. Like the Chinese Jamaicans, they're Jamaican. And the Indian Jamaicans or Indian Trinis, they're just Trini or Grenadian or Jamaican or wherever they're from. So why is it I said that's American, that divisive thing. You don't hear African Australian, Asian Australian, African European. They're just European. They're just Australian. They're just Asian. I said, this is like the only place. Right. So you just over there living that hunky-dory life.
I like it over here because I don't feel as though my skin color is a problem. It's not a threat to anybody. I literally had the Polizei follow me a few weeks ago. He was not following me because I was Black. He was not following me for any other reason than he was going in the same direction that I was going. And he literally turned off and it was whatever. Like there was no, oh my gosh, let me hold my breath. Like I had no fear like I do when I'm in the States. Like I just continued to drive. When I look back up, he was gone. When I see them, my interactions with them, even like when you go to the grocery store, I honestly wave. They wave at you. Hello, hello. The Germans out here, like they're not worried about my skin color. Like my neighbors, I don't speak German. They don't speak English, but we all wave at each other. Like, hi, hi. Like everybody watches out for each other. I've never had an issue with my actual skin color being a actual issue here. And that's why I love it over here. I can just be me and exist. And I'm not being followed to the store. I'm just a person here. And that's what I love. I can just live freely and enjoy and look forward to things and not have to worry about, am I going to make it home tonight?
Yeah. And that's why I feel like everybody needs to come together, because at the end of the day, we all have the same concerns. Like just because one person's African or one person's from the Caribbean or one person's from, South America or Latin America, when they're here, we're all worried about getting home safe. Right. So us hating each other, that's not gonna fix the problem.
It's making it worse, actually.
Right. And I have a feeling sometimes this may sound a little controversial, because it's like, I've had this experience with that's why I don't like being groups, because it's like I have to inherit a struggle that's not mine. I'm being judged for something that I don't do. Mm-hmm. So it's like I desperately want better for the Black community, because I'm being judged based off the Black community.
Right.
And there's people who want better. There's people who don't give a damn. And it's frustrating, because it's like I'm out here fighting, and it's like, this was not my life, but I'm being penalized for something that I didn't do. When you see the, groups of people hanging outside and it looks like they're up to no good, sometimes I'm just like, guys, like, I want to be able to walk down the street and not have people judge me, or being at the park, hanging out with my friends, having a good time without people want to be like, oh man, turn down your music, or y'all are so loud. Because there are people who abuse the cause. Like there are some people who deserve peace. So it's just like those bad apples spoil the whole bunch. And it's like, I feel like our people are vilified the most. So we should want to try to change opinions and adjust, how perceptions. That should, I feel like that should be on the forefront of our minds. Agreed. And it's not just like, I feel like it's not just obeying rules, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's other things that you need to rebel against. Because I remember I was talking to my aunt, and we were talking about the hair thing. And she's like, it's not there yet. It's not there yet. And I was like, well, how do we get there if no one takes the step? Let me find this other James Baldwin quote. I couldn't remember it. Something about change. But yeah, I'm like, somebody has to shift, you know what I'm saying? Things won't get better if no one takes the step to do it. Oh, he said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. So it's just funny how, you know, our family, like I said, they're immigrants. So they kind of wanted to fit in and put their head down and grind and get theirs. I mean, and it is what it is, you know, that's, it comes with the territory. I don't blame them. But, you know, for us, we're a different generation. And so it was just funny when she was saying like, oh, we're not there yet. I'm like, you gotta face it. Like, if you just ignore it, you just gonna be repeating itself.
Right.
So I just want us to all get along. Like, we're not judging you.
Don't judge.
We don't want to be judged either. That's all.
And find the beauty in your culture. Like,
Yeah.
stop watching things that keep triggering you, making you feel that you're still down in the slumps.
We're on the same team. That's all we're trying to say.
That's it. You get to the top, pull one up. Pull one up. That's it.
Absolutely. Pay it
Any
forward.
final words, Nita?
No, I've enjoyed talking to you, ladies. Thank you for having me.
Likewise. We'll have to have you back on again.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, people, this was Hey Cuz. I guess the first chapter of being Black in America versus being Black American. I hope we get to the day where we're just all Americans and it doesn't matter. So, but you know, in a perfect world. Peace and love.
Bye.
Bye.